Hello, Wear Many Hats listeners. It's me, Mark Robinson, your host. Hope everybody is well. As ever, please support the podcast by liking, sharing, and following our content across LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon. Your support keeps us going and obviously helps to promote the message that we're trying to send, which is how to get people into facilities management and help close that skills gap. We've got a really interesting one for you today. I'm really, really pleased to be joined by a gentleman that I have been chasing in my role as a salesman for nearly 10 years. Welcome today, Darien Jay, who is the CEO of Vixus Property Group. Hello, Darien.
Hello, thank you for having me.
That's all right. Absolute pleasure, mate. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Have you had a good day?
It's been a busy day. Whenever I come to London, I always try and get as many meetings in as possible.
Yeah.
So, started first thing this morning and it's my last meeting of the day.
Really? How many you had today?
Oh, I lost track. 3 or 4 plus lunch.
Oh, no, they all tend to bleed into one another, don't they? And you get a bit lost.
Yeah, but I got to make it worth my while. I'm in London once or twice a week, so make the most of that time when I'm here.
Fantastic. Where do you come from, Darien?
I live on the edge of the Cotswolds in Gloucestershire.
Oh, lovely. Mm-hmm. That's a nice part of the world.
Yeah, I got there just before the first COVID lockdown, which is ideal, really. In
the
grand scheme of things, yeah.
So you went country before everybody decided to go country because of COVID? Yeah. Oh, I don't blame you. Okay, well, listen, you ready?
Sure.
Should we get straight into it?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, listen, as ever, I ask everyone the same thing. Walk us through your career and how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So I currently run 2 businesses under the Vixus banner. I've got a residential property management company and an FM consultancy firm.
Right.
I could give you a long monologue about my 15 plus years in the FM sector, but I suppose if you want the highlights, study for a degree in politics and economics because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Oh, really? Is that why you chose it? Just because you weren't sure?
It was a generalist degree, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, I can probably get a job at the back end of this because I don't really know where I want to be.
Working as a runner in the Houses of Parliament or something like that. Yeah. The Tories chasing it.
But as might come out in this podcast, I can't say I was destined to be an FM from a young child. It's where I ended up, but that was my degree. Got my first proper job as an undergrad at Hayden Building Management, which became Balfour Beatty.
Right.
And I guess in terms of how I ended up in FM procurement as a career, best way to put it, there was a turning point when I got offered 28k and a BMW.
Yeah. We've all had that conversation, Darien. It's a big day.
Yeah.
It's a big day. Yeah.
Yeah, I was 23 at the time, and I was on the graduate scheme at Balfour Beatty.
Right.
My boss phoned me up.
Can I interject? Do you
Sure.
mind? How did you find that graduate scheme, and how did you get involved in it? Because I think that our listeners would be quite interested to find out how you went down that route.
Yeah. So good fortune played a part, definitely.
Right.
So at Bath, where I studied, they tend to focus on undergrad placement year and then do your final year and then you leave for a proper job.
Yeah, proper job.
So I did my placement year at Hayden Balfour Beatty as an undergrad.
Okay.
And that was through connections. My father had worked in FM previously, told me to speak to a chap called Paul Milner.
So let me get this straight. You're a second generation FMer. This is the first one. The first one. Second gen. Brilliant.
So I did my 18 months there.
Yeah.
Very cozy job, very, huge autonomy, huge exposure to the business, but I couldn't really do any damage.
Yeah.
And did well enough when they said, do you want to come back when
Right.
you finish a degree? And sure, because that was 2008-9 time, and that was that first recession, big financial recession in
I remember that one. That was harsh. Yeah, I remember.
I spent my final year pretty comfortable knowing I had a job to go to.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up, when I finished my degree in 2010, went back to work at Balfour's.
Yeah.
And my first placement was in procurement function.
Right.
And
was that an area you wanted to move into, or was it just you kind of got pigeonholed into it, and then there you go?
Pigeonholed, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because of the financial crisis, they delayed the grad scheme.
Right.
And I needed to pay the rent. So
Yeah.
I made some calls within Balfour from people I knew from the previous year.
Yeah.
And one of them was in the procurement team. He said,
Right.
yeah, we can bring you on as a temp for a few months. And luckily, the grad scheme started up and they kept me on in that slightly more structured procurement role.
Right.
I did that for 6 months and I was meant to move on to the next one. And that's when my boss phoned me up and said, how much to keep you here?
Yeah.
Make me an offer.
Right.
And that offer was 28k in a BMW. At 23, I was living in London. I had no responsibility. Straight out of uni, and I'll have some of that. And maybe sound a bit dirty to talk about money, but it was money orientated.
Yeah, of course.
I was young. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder, and that was the best way to do it.
A significant amount of money after you've spent, the last 3 or 4 years doing a degree as well, where you've probably been skint living off lentils and pot noodles.
And then moving to London for the job, and as you well know, London doesn't come cheap.
No.
You have to pay the rent, so it helped. And I bust the gut doing that for a few years, getting completely lost. Went to GVA Grimley. That's when I started in consultancy, still procurement, still FM, but consultancy. I spent 5 or 6 years doing that, all the while progressing up the ladder, but feeling, if I'm honest, feeling a bit more lost every year, not really sure what I was doing it for, Mark.
Really?
It was 40, 50, 60-hour weeks on a regular basis, turning up, doing a damn good job, but not feeling fulfilled, for want of a better term.
The passion wasn't there.
And what it really was, it took me a while to realise, is I didn't know what the end goal looked like for me.
Right.
So that's something, since starting Vixus just over 6 years ago, something I've really had to get to grips with was, what does my end goal look like? What am I doing this for? Why am I working so hard?
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair question to ask yourself, though. I think we all ask ourselves that. But quite brave as well to step away and then, start your own business. Yeah. And I'm guessing still a pretty young man, really.
I just turned 30.
Wow.
And I know it's nonsense now, but I remember when I was that age, someone had told me a couple of years previously, if you don't start your business by the time you're 30, then it's too late.
Right.
And it stuck with me, and I was getting to that age. I was getting, whilst I was progressing at GVA, that company was growing so fast that I couldn't keep up. Yeah. I was getting further and further away from the top table, even without doing anything wrong. And I like to feel important, Mark.
As we all do, Darien, as we all do.
And I was getting less and less access to the board, not feeling like I mattered so much in the company. It used to be quite a small, well-contained business. A few other things in terms of relationships at the workplace. I thought, no, this is my time. I've got clients who like working with me personally. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, I suppose. Always known there was something in the back of my mind that said I had to try and do this myself.
This time next year we'll be
something
millionaires.
Like that. I can regale you with stories of making garden gnomes in my garage and selling them at car boot sales when I was 12 years old. All sorts of things like that. But I knew somewhere inside I had to give it a crack. And I was terrified. Didn't have a clue how to run a business, but I suppose confident enough to give it a try and hope for the best.
Yeah. I love the story about your list. Do you want to share that?
My list?
Yeah. The business list. You write down a list of the things you need to do to start a business. You put it on the website.
So I found it recently in my scrap paper file. I'm a process guy, first and foremost. I love anything that you can process, map, systemize, simplify. That's where I get my kicks.
That's the procurement in you there.
Maybe so. So I didn't have a clue how to set up a business. What to do? Google. What do I need to do to set up a business? And there is virtually nothing out online I could find that clearly, concisely plots through,
articulated it. Yeah.
So I made one up. Set up a bank account. Set up go on Companies House, register your name. Set up a website and domain. create templates for the documents that you want to use.
Yeah.
And a handful of other things like that that were really basic but quite complicated to get done when you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I suppose the most important thing was speaking to people who could help me with those, and then they put me in touch with the next person. Oh, yeah, we set your bank account up. You're going to speak to these accountants. Oh, once you set those up, right, what about payroll? Bang, bang, bang. All of a sudden, it all starts to knit together.
Yeah.
Definitely a few false starts with that.
Yeah.
I tried to do my own website and set up my own domain. What a disaster. Things that second time round, absolutely don't touch that. There's a reason why people do this for a living.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to bring that specialism into your business, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm first and foremost, as a business owner, I'm a generalist, and I think there's a natural tendency in I suppose in any industry where people become more and more specialized as they get older and more senior in their role, and they force themselves into this niche, and it gets very difficult to backtrack after a while.
Yeah,
because you get used to the salary, you get used to the job title.
You do, yeah. You get caught in that cycle of month to month, bill to bill, paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, of course.
But going and setting up your own business, and all of a sudden, not only was I CEO, I was chief fee earner, chief sales guy, CFO, head of HR, head of finance.
Yeah.
I can't be a specialist anymore. I need to be a generalist.
Yeah.
And that changes everything.
Yeah.
And nowadays, my businesses, they are based around having a team of people who do specialist roles and are damn good at them. Most of those people who do those jobs do them far better than I could. And I just oversee it from the top and implement the strategy and the process to make sure the business runs the right way.
Yeah.
But the detail, that's what other people get kicks out of.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you see your role within the business as more of a leader that points the business in the right direction and provides that crucial support as and when required for your guys on the ground, I suppose, is the way I explain it?
Yeah. I have a laser focus on the end goal. And the end goal for me personally is December 2031.
Yeah.
Which is 8 years away, something like that.
Yeah.
And that is the point when I no longer want to be day-to-day running Vixus.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that we're going to necessarily sell it or close it down. It means that my team can buy it out, or I can step into a chairman role. The details are less relevant. What it really means is the company has to be in a position in 10 years' time, or 8 years' time now,
where it's self-sufficient. Yeah, and you can bring somebody else to run it, and you play golf.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not golf, but I understand the principle.
Yeah. Go fishing. If it was me, it'd be fishing, Darien, to be fair.
Is building the company to make profit without having the founders' direct ownership on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And that's not something that happens overnight.
No. A lot of hard work.
And it took, we're 6 years in now, it took me 4 years to probably realise that and stop being the chief fee earner. And that was a big step, having to decide to gradually wind down my fee earning role to these days practically zero.
Take that step back and let go of that control.
Yeah.
Was that quite, because it's your baby, I'm guessing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. And I'm still not really good at it now. You ask my colleagues and can you just sense check this document before it goes to a client?
Yeah.
No, that's not quite right. You need to reword that. And I'm being pedantic, and it's difficult because, like you say, it's my baby. It's my name above the door, really. But I also need to learn to trust my guys that just because that's not the way I do it doesn't mean it's the wrong way.
Well, I guess you bring them in for a reason, don't you? You know, whenever you bring anybody into a business, you bring them in to deal with a core element of that business. And if you're over them all the time, I guess you're strangling their creativity and their ability to do things.
Absolutely. And there's a huge trust piece there. I think I need to trust my team to do what they're paid to do, and they need to trust that I have their best interests at heart and that the way that the company is going strategically is in their best interest.
Yeah. Okay, so you're already a very, very busy man, quite clearly. but not really happy with being a very busy man already, you've decided to get into business coaching as well.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
So I've worked with my business coach, a chap called Tom Allchurch from Action Coach for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And it was Tom, with the input from a few other coaches as well, who really opened my eyes to, why do you have this business? And Tom first approached me, and he reminds me of this quite often. The first thing I said to him is, I don't know what I want to do, Tom, but running this business is killing me, and I hate it. I hate what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Because I was doing 50, 60 odd hours a week, burning out. I was trying to do everything. Had baby on the way. What am I trying to do here?
Yeah.
And it was him who sat me down and said, right, if you've got a business, if you own a business, you need to understand what you've got this business for. What do you want from life? And that wasn't a light bulb moment for me. That's been a slow drip of understanding over the last few years.
Right.
But for me, what it really is having the financial freedom to choose how I use my time.
Yeah.
And that might mean doing a bit of work if I want to, but I shouldn't have to do work if I don't need to. For me, I'll give you a story here then. It took me ages to be convinced to do it, but I now have a vision board on my wall in the office.
Right.
And I'm not one of those type of people who normally goes for vision boards and the like, but Tom really encouraged me to do it.
Yeah.
And he said, if you don't look every day at what you're trying to achieve, you'll find it very hard to achieve it. So the vision board, first thing it says, 31 December 2031, which is my end goal. That's when I need to be out of Vixus.
Yeah.
And then on it, I've got a few luxuries like new car, holiday home in the Alps, nice things like that.
Yeah.
But perhaps more important, I've got me being more involved in working with an animal charity and teaching my daughter how to ski and things that really matter to me. And it's those things that get me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's not a zero-sum game. We do that because my personal success is dependent on the success of the business.
True.
The business is successful when the team are successful and they're rewarded for making it a success.
Yep.
And the company achieves what we need to achieve by delivering a best-in-class service to our clients.
Yeah.
So our motivation is to deliver a best service to our clients because it helps me achieve my personal goal, and in doing so, my team reaches their personal goals too.
Yeah.
And we're all laser focused on that. And I'm conscious I probably answer your question completely well there, Mark, but the principle being I'm so indebted to my business coach and the concept of coaching to understand what I want from life that I felt I needed to give back.
Yeah.
So 18 months ago, I took my business coaching qualifications, passed those.
Right.
And I'd like to spend more time doing it. But at the minute, I have a handful of clients who I coach and mentor, who some of them are long-time business owners and some of them are new in the last year or two, set their company up.
Yeah.
And it's so fulfilling. Mike Hanaher, one of my coaching clients, runs a small cleaning consultancy firm.
Right.
Recently gone self-employed, and watching how he's developed his company and all the good things that he's put in place pretty much from day one, because he's had the foresight to reach out to a coach early on, and building his team up. Within the first year of business, it took me 4 years really to take more than one employee on.
Yeah.
He's done it in a year.
Wow.
He's got his exit goal, not for me to say anything about that specifically, but he's got it ready. And that's all from the work that he and I have been doing together.
Yeah.
And every fortnight we meet and I hold him accountable for the previous 2 weeks.
Right, really?
Every 90 days we have a more formal meeting and we plot the quarterly goals.
Yeah.
And the quarterly goals are linked to his exit goals.
I guess a lot of business owners or people that are starting a business wouldn't necessarily know that service was available to them. Because it's not something you hear about on a day-to-day, is it?
No. And it's maddening that it's not, because you look at any professional sports team or professional athlete in the world, anyone who's hugely successful has an amazing coach behind them. Any England rugby team, Manchester United, Chicago Bulls, doesn't matter. They all have a coach or a coaching team that help them achieve. If you chucked a bunch of people in the room without a coach, there would be no strategy, no discipline.
I don't know about Manchester United, Darien, but
I only said it to appease you.
Hopefully, we'll get there.
But business is the same.
Yeah,
and I'm adamant that there's a trifecta of coaching in life. Well, I certainly have it in my life. I have a physical health coach, so effectively a personal trainer, keeps my body in shape. I have a business coach in Tom who keeps my business goals on track and helps me deal with any of the day-to-day stuff that crops up that throws me for six.
Yeah.
And I have a life coach, if you like, or a personal coach, and he guides me through the non-work stuff. And obviously they overlap when you're a business owner. Life and work tend to overlap. But,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
But he helps me understand why I need to spend more time with my family and getting to the point where I'm fully energized to support the other things outside my work.
Right. Okay. That's quite a clear structure, to be fair, in terms of how you live your life, work alongside your business. It's quite an interesting concept, actually. I don't think I've really heard that before. I've heard of people having either one or the other, but not really all three.
The more good people you surround yourself with, the more successful you're going to be, whether that's in business or in life.
Very true.
And I've worked with people who didn't quite work for me, and that's fine. We take lessons learned. But in Tom and Dan Stanley, my mentor, my life coach, they've been absolute rocks for me in terms of mental well-being, understanding where I want to be in life and what type of person I want to be without sounding too dramatic about it. I started working with Dan just after my daughter was born. We got into COVID lockdowns. I had a business that was fairly new and didn't really know how it all joined together.
Tough time to start it. Yeah, of course.
And he kind of rebuilt me.
Right.
He got my head in the right space that I was kind of ready for business coaching. After my time formally with Dan finished, then I started working with Tom, more focused on the business, because my personal life, I'm not going to say it was all perfect, but I was on top of it. I knew
things had settled. Things had settled down. There was clarity in your mind where you could focus on that other element.
Clarity is the word, Mark. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, really interesting. So if you were to, all the knowledge you've got now, you've gained over the years with X amount of years in business, facilities management, procurement, things like that. If you were to give 18-year-old Darien any advice based on what you know now, what would you go about and tell him?
So I give this advice to anyone starting their career. It's okay, age 18, not to know what you want to do with your life, or not to know what you want to do for a job.
Yeah.
I sure as hell didn't.
Yeah.
And whether it's FM or any sector that you go into, you don't have to be passionate about your job or your career. That doesn't mean that you don't thrive in it. It doesn't mean you give it your 100% attention and dedication whilst you're doing it. But we focus so much on the commodity that we sell that we sometimes forget whether it's cleaning services, used cars, magic beans. It doesn't really matter. People buy from people who we like and we trust.
Completely agree with that.
Great salespeople can sell pretty much anything. Great business owners can run pretty much any business successfully.
Yeah.
Most of the skills we learn in life are transferable. So if you're sitting there as an 18-year-old thinking, ooh, do I go into FM? Do I go into a different industry?
Yeah.
I think rather than worrying too much about the sector or the role, ask yourself the following. Is my boss going to nurture my talents, help me develop?
Yeah.
Does the company give me good vibes in terms of how they operate?
Yeah.
Do I have a better offer on the table? If not, then you probably go for that one. And
is there 28 grand in a BMW? Yeah.
And once you're there, get as broad an experience as you can. Try not to get pigeonholed really early into one role. If there's a graduate scheme or something similar on offer, then grasp it. Get as much visibility in the business as possible, because you might find that you love FM, but you hate procurement, or you love ops, and you hate sales. Everyone's different. Everyone will find their niche. Or if you're like me, you'll think that everything's kind of all right and you won't be great at any of it, so you'll become a generalist and you own the business. But I couldn't have done that without the exposure to seeing different parts of the company and seeing a couple of different businesses in my time.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to what you said about transferable skills, because I'd love to get your opinion on this. I think business, and also, whether you look at FM, car sales, whatever, I think business on the whole is really bad at identifying whether or not skills are transferable. And I think the business is also very bad at pigeonholing people. I.e., if you've worked in FM, that's all you can do. If you've operated a factory, that's all you can ever do. And I think an element of that is down to recruiters. Recruiters to a certain extent not looking into those transferable skills. Some companies are really brave, and because I'll give you like a real world example. I, prior to getting involved in services, sold photocopiers. And before that, I've run a finance company in New Zealand with receivables of about $18 million. Do you know what I mean? So it was quite transferable. Then I ended up in security. And so a company took a massive, what they determined to be a risk. But a lot of companies don't do that. What's your view on that? And I know that was a very big, long question, and I apologise. But
no, I completely agree. So I've got 6 full-time and a few part-time on the books at the minute, and 5 of them are not FMers by background, or they are in their role having not really done it before until I employed them.
Right.
The only exception is Steve, the MD of my property management business, who I really needed someone who knew their stuff on property management. But I've got a business operations manager who we took on initially as an admin, and found out very quickly that he's super good at whatever I give him, but he likes finance, he likes processes, and he likes technology. So we're developing him in due course, he'll be our CFO, CTO, because that's where his skill set is. I hire primarily on attitude and hunger rather than CV skill set. It might sound a bit cliche, but I spend a lot of time and attention on recruitment. I use a specialist recruiter who does behavioural profiling on all applicants. And I look at that before I look at their CV.
Right, okay, that's interesting.
I'll say to Claire, my recruiter, I'll say, I need a people person in this role because they're going to be focused on speaking to clients most of their day. Okay, she can find me someone who maybe have less experience in that role than someone else, but they're scoring much higher on the people element, on their behavioural profile. The good thing about FM, good thing about procurement, property management, we're not talking about saving lives on the operating table here. What we do, dare I say, is largely common sense. And the benefit of that means that I can teach people, or we can put them on training courses to learn how to do the job. And real world experience is a great way of learning FM.
Completely agree.
From what you were telling me, Mark, as well, both of us kind of landed in FM with no prior formal qualifications. We figured out our way as we went along.
I've no idea what it was, mate. I've no idea.
And that's how I've built my business up. We've got a great team of people, most of whom had no real prior experience in that sector, but they were all switched on. They all had common sense and can go a long way. Okay,
so as a business owner now, because obviously that's what you are, what stands out for you in a CV? What would like you'd go, I want to see that person?
That's a really good question. I'll start with the negative.
Go on.
If your CV is written poorly, if the sentences don't read well, if it's littered with spelling mistakes, then I won't look at it seriously. Because if this is your shop window and that's the best you're able to pull together, then how bad are your reports going to be when I need a report writing?
Very true. Yeah.
How much pride do you take in your personal appearance when you're meeting clients? If the only thing you sent me is your CV and that's badly written, that says enough to me.
Yeah.
So we start at that. The CV reads well. I look at major gaps that haven't been explained. They ring alarm bells. Assuming that's not an issue, then I say, okay, are they saying the right things here? And that's, I suppose, subjective, and that's why we use the behavioural profiling to supplement this.
Yeah.
But I'll give most people a chance if they haven't caused any red flags, and they're still keen on the role. We kind of recruit through a process of elimination, a self-elimination, we call it. So you submit a CV, and then we ask you to fill in your behavioural profile. The amount of people who don't bother to do that is quite telling. Means they can't be bothered. They don't really care about their job.
Yeah. Have you found that, especially with behaviour, because there's a time allocation associated with that, obviously, someone's got to invest quite a bit of time to get it done. Mm-hmm. Have you, because I remember doing behavioural things like quite a while ago, actually. I haven't done one for a while, actually. Yeah. Probably in the last 10, 15 years. I know what I am anyway. I'm just an outgoing, gobby person that people like chatting to from time to time. But do you think that given, how time is, when I think these days, especially with new generations coming through, they see anything that's time consuming and go, I can't be bothered. I'm going to do something else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those are the exact people who I don't want working for me.
Yeah.
If you can't be bothered to spend 15 minutes to fill out a behavioural profile for a job that, hopefully for me, is your dream job, then you're not the right person for this role. I'm not expecting them to spend hours on their evening or weekend, but a few minutes to demonstrate a willingness and to offer some valuable feedback to me before we sit down and have a full-on interview.
Yeah.
It's self-elimination. It gets rid of the chaff.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of chaff out there in the market, unfortunately, because we self-eliminate probably 60, 70% of initial candidates that way.
Right. Yeah.
And the ones who turn up, who do that, and it reads well, and they turn up to interview, by the time they get to us, so Claire will do a first round interview just to test the water, see if there's anything really unseemly there, if you like. Mm. And she'll say, I've got 4 or 5 candidates for you.
Yeah.
And most often I would employ 80% of those. Right. We just pick the one we like the most.
Yeah.
But because we've gone through that process, the candidates that we are seeing are first rate. So
you've got that assurance and that confidence that that's standard. Okay, let me ask the same question, but in a different way. Mm-hmm. Okay, you've got a 20-year-old graduate.
Yeah.
They've just done a degree in political science.
Yeah.
Not sure what they want to do. Listen to this podcast. They're like, I like the sound of Darien.
Yeah.
I like the sound of Vixus. Mm-hmm. I'd love to work for them. How does that individual approach?
So I guess reach out to me. We've got details on our website. If you are proactive enough to come to us and say, I really like the look of Vixus, I like what you're saying, what your mission is.
Yeah.
Have you got a job for me? Then the answer is maybe. I don't know right now. But but the fact you've gone to the effort to proactively approach us demonstrates a lot.
Yeah.
That puts you way ahead of anyone else on our radar.
Yeah.
Because there's a hunger there. There's an understanding that you actually give a damn about what we're trying to do. And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Do you know something? I find your response fascinating because I would say the same thing. Mm-hmm. But it astounds me how little things like that happen these days. I mean, I would say probably 0.5% of people would actually put themselves out there and reach out to employers such as yourself.
Yeah.
But such a valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you are, like you said, you're putting yourself in front of people because you've got a little bit of nous. Scary thing to do, of course it is, but you put yourself outside of your comfort zone from time to time.
Maybe, but the more you do these things, the less scary it gets. Once you realise that the worst I can say is, sorry, mate, not interested, or ignore your email, or never return your call.
Yeah.
You soon get over that, and P.S. I won't do that. That's not how I operate. I will always respond to someone who approaches us for a job.
Yeah.
But that's the worst case scenario. It's unlikely. It's not going to be any worse than that. So, you do it once, twice, maybe 5 times for 5 companies you really feel like you could offer value to, then you soon stop getting concerned about rejection.
Yeah.
I know Stephen Bartlett on his podcast had a story about this. He gets a lot of inquiries.
Yeah, he puts competition in here.
I mean,
he wants to come on the show. You know?
There's not enough episodes of Wear Many Hats to keep me occupied all week, so I have to
Very
branch
true.
out.
Yeah. It's all right. You're allowed to listen to the podcast, Darien. Don't worry.
But Stephen Bartlett says the one thing I'm looking for, because he has the luxury of having dozens of applicants, proactive applicants every day, says, come to me and tell me what you can offer me, what value you can offer me. And that's not saying 20 years of experience. It's saying maybe I got some skill in some weird part of IT, or I go and bring you a coffee every day for a month just to show my willingness. Something that makes you stand out and say, oh, actually, this guy or girl is able to provide something that not everyone else is. It's not just give me a job. It makes it stand out.
Yeah.
So that's just another way of looking at it.
It's a good approach. It's a good approach. Yeah, that's really interesting. So there you go, guys. If anybody is on a graduate scheme, you don't only have to be studying for political sciences. Other degrees are available. Feel free to reach out to Darien, and I'm sure he will have a conversation with you. Okay, so obviously, as a business owner now for what is a well-established business, operating within sort of the FM space and procurement consultancy and so on and so forth. What's the most difficult part of your job, Darien? What do you find the hardest?
People management.
Really?
Yeah, I'm an okay boss, but it's not my natural forte.
Yeah.
Because I'm a process guy.
Yeah. I
wish everyone just followed processes and that would be great. But a lot of my team are much more people focused, outgoing, and say, because I'm so big on behavioural profile, I know the behavioural profile of all my team, and they're all different.
Yeah.
So I have to wear a different hat, mind the pun.
Wear many hats, there we go.
For each of my team. When I'm dealing with Will, who's our finance guy, he's process driven. That's an easy conversation because he just gets exactly how I like to work, and I get how he likes to work, and it's bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
With Steve, our MD, he's much more of a people person. He's more emotional, not in a bad way, but less kind of look at a spreadsheet and get the answer than perhaps Will or I am. So I have to be a bit softer in the way that I approach conversations with Steve, and to get the best out of him, I suppose.
Yeah.
Mark, one of my consultants, he loves to be out in amongst people talking, big, brash, not in a bad way, but that's just
Is that Mark Weston?
That's Mark Weston.
I know Mark Weston. It's quite heavily involved in politics as well, isn't it? Yeah.
So he's a city councillor in his part-time. And we were talking about passions outside of work. But but Mark loves the limelight. So whenever I get a chance, he'll run tender briefings, he'll host presentations. We're getting him more and more involved in that because that's where he gets his kicks.
So he's like me, a professional attention seeker then. That kind of thing. That's what I like to call it. Yeah.
But it took me a while to realise that and to adjust my management style to each of my team and to give them what they want in terms of their career and how they get excited to come to work. What gives them that thrill?
Right. Okay. So, look, I mean, a really interesting chat with yourself. Actually, quite a different podcast to what we do usually. So, thank you very much. So, what would your core message to our listeners be?
My core message is to know your end goal. And for some like me, that might be retiring early so you can spend your time globetrotting, or like I did, go and do Everest Base Camp. And if that's the case, go and buy a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, learn how to run a business and crack on. For others, my colleague AJ, probably the only colleague I haven't mentioned by name yet today, she works full-time for me, but she condenses her hours so that every Friday she has most of the day to focus on her powerlifting.
Right.
And AJ's passion in life is she's effectively a professional powerlifter. She world record holder, world champion, you name it, and she is it.
Olympian?
No, she started too late in life.
Right, okay.
So she's age category level now.
Still impressive, though.
Seriously impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do much time at the gym, Mark, but the numbers she puts up will make your eyes water.
Really?
But my point is, she knows what her end goal is. She wants to prioritize her powerlifting, and she's got personal goals to achieve that. So she makes her career, her day job, work around that.
Yeah.
So that's my call to action for all the listeners today, is to sit down and really think about why you're doing what you do for a living. You don't have to love your job, but you do have to have something in your life that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's it all for? For me, I couldn't have got to this place without my coach and my mentors, and that's why I like to give back by being a business coach myself.
Yeah, of course.
But what I would say, if you're sitting there listening to this, you haven't got your shit together, and I know a lot of people don't, because I was in that position not too long ago.
I've been there, mate. I've been there, yeah.
Take action now.
Yeah.
If you don't know where to start, reach out to a business coach or a mentor or a life coach, and these people are brilliant at asking you the questions that you need to ask yourself.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps, and I'm always available if anyone wants to talk more on that.
Yeah, what a rousing end. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Darien. Well, listen, we need to know about Everest Base Camp, by the way. So tell us a little bit. I know that I know, but tell us a little bit about the things that you like to do outside of work to relax, and don't forget about Everest Base Camp.
So aside from nurturing and developing my daughter, which I get huge pleasure from, I am an advocate of making sure that you give time for yourself. And there's a saying, if you don't have 100% time for yourself sometimes, then you'll never be able to give 100% to your family and your work when you need to, because you'll always be low on energy.
I like that.
So for me, I like to take physical challenges, and they're things that are so tough physically that I can't focus on work or life admin stuff, because my only focus is on getting up that bloody hill, as it was for Everest, 10 days marching through the Himalayas, eating 1,000 calories a day, not getting any sleep, and with altitude sickness. And I don't know if any of you have experienced altitude sickness, but if not, then imagine having 6 or 7 pints, walking through a narrow alley, but one side of the alleyway is a sheer 300-meter drop.
Yeah.
That'll give you an idea of the feeling.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like fun, to be fair.
There were times it wasn't fun, but then you get to the bottom of Mount Everest and you look up and you see Mother Nature in all her glory. Yeah. And the best word I could use to describe it is perspective. Yeah. All of a sudden, all of those little work problems, all those life issues, they don't seem so important, so significant when you're staring up at something as impressive as that. Yeah, this is why I'm doing it. Yeah. This is what I really get my thrills from in life. Wow. So that's why, I always try and set myself one physically really challenging goal each year. Last year was Everest. This year we're doing Mount Toubkal in Morocco. Really? Yeah. Wow. Just to have something to be excited about, to remember on those hard days at work why we're doing it. Yeah. So did you go to the top of Everest then? No. To get to the top, was the plan Everest, to go to the top, or was it just base camp? If you want to get to the top of Everest, you're talking. We'll start off with 60 grand cash. What? Yeah. To climb a mountain? In fees and Sherpas and equipment, minimum 60, might be double that. Really? And then add on 5 to 10 years of proper mountaineering experience. Yeah. And then add on the, 1 in 10, 1 in 20 chance that you're going to die up the mountain. Yeah, they do say that you'll pass like 25 bodies on the way to the top or something, don't they? Oh, and the 4 to 6 weeks that you need to take off work to acclimatise, to get there, to get up and down. Wow. I know 1 or 2 people who have summited Everest. I remember Paul Spatman, our mountain guide, said to me, if you want to do Everest, go and do it, but you really have to want to do it. Because you don't mess around. Once you're up there, there's not. That. Yeah, it's not like you can just turn back and get an Uber back down, is it? I suppose. Yeah, base camp took us 10 days to get to of bloody hard slog. Way more physically demanding than I expected, and certainly more mentally demanding. Yeah, and that was just to get to the bottom of the mountain. So don't underestimate what Everest entails. And when you see it up close, you realize quite how, everyone at 8,000 meters sounds a lot, but when you see it, you go, wow, it just takes your breath away.
I imagine it does. Yeah. So did you hear any stories about the Yeti while you were?
I didn't hear any stories about the Yeti.
No.
There were quite a few good and bad stories. But again, just to bring it back to reality, there was a chap who was 2 days ahead of us on the trip.
Yeah.
So he was kind of a clear 9-10 day path to get up to base camp.
Yeah.
So a guy 2 days ahead of us, and the weather had come in, and you can't get helicopter out when the weather's too bad, when it's too cloudy, because there's mountains everywhere.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And he was up almost at base camp and suffered severe altitude sickness, couldn't get him off, died. He was early 50s, not unfit, not unhealthy, and it brought it home. And then we got, so we completed it, got home. Only 4 out of the 6 of us made it to base camp, by the way.
Really?
In our small group, because the 2 of them just couldn't cope with the altitude. But we got back, and 4-6 weeks later, we heard that the helicopter that we got back to Kathmandu had crashed against the mountain in bad weather. It is not a little jaunt that you do 3 months' notice. It is a seriously risky thing, even just to do base camp.
A huge undertaking by the sound of it.
And fortunately, my wife didn't realise quite how risky it was until I got back. But
I bet you got in trouble.
It's all right. Yeah. But I don't forget that, and I certainly don't take mountaineering lightly these days.
Okay, brilliant. All right, well, listen, Darien, that's the end of the show. How do you feel?
Very good.
Yeah.
I hope that was useful for your listeners.
Absolutely exceptional. I think that there's some really key takeaways from today's podcast that'll really help people, not just in the facilities management industry, also just the business arena. So, Darien, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks very much.
Brilliant. All right, guys, that's the end of another one. A really interesting one. I'd like to thank Darien for joining us, and we will see you next time. Thank you.